In this video, we will continue our discussion of the media, focusing on news, journalists and how they acquire the news sources, how the media covers issues, the characteristics of reporters, opinion and commentary as distinguished from the news, how the media influences government and the new media. News is a selective account of what happens in the world. Common subjects are violence, wars, crime, school shootings, natural disasters, earthquakes and hurricanes, and scandals, sexual and financial. News is reported by journalists. They work under time pressures with tight deadlines to come up with stories around the clock. This job has become more difficult in recent years as budget cuts have led news organizations to demand more stories for more outlets from fewer reporters. A majority of journalists are white, middle class, middle-aged, and male. Women now compose about 1/3 of the press corps, and racial minorities about 1/10. In a survey, 36% identified themselves as Democrats, 33% as independents, and 18% as Republicans. Any influence of reporters' characteristics and opinions on their stories is limited by the norms of objectivity they learn in journalism school or on the job. Specified in the profession's code of ethics, these include reporting accurate information, not deliberately distorting or plagiarizing, and separating reporting from advocacy. Reporters acquire the news in a variety of different ways. They have beats, institutions, organizations, and subjects that a reporter is assigned to cover regularly. Sources, people, often in government, who for one reason or another provide reporters with information. And scoops, news obtained ahead of other reporters. Government reports are other good sources of news. Legislative committees, regulatory agencies, and governmental departments and commissions conduct investigations, hold hearings, and issue reports and press releases. Journalists sometimes draw on these sources for their stories. Investigative reporting is intensive research by journalists, usually into subjects that those involved don't want exposed. Wire services are agencies, particularly the Associated Press, that cover and transmit news stories from throughout the world to their subscribers, resulting in similar coverage in many news media. Journalists also have to be aware that sometimes their sources are trying to spin a story. Spin is interpreting information to support one's point of view or at least put the best face on events. Sound bites are brief phrases uttered by candidates that are designed to be compelling and fit into news stories. And indexing is when journalists index the news to the debate about an issue and policy among officials and politicians. Reporters have a variety of different characteristics. Some are thought to be lapdogs, journalists when the government's perspective overwhelmingly dominates their news stories. Some are watchdogs, journalists when their news stories hold people in power accountable by scrutinizing and reporting their statements, activities, claimed accomplishments, and failures. And some are attack dogs, journalists whose stories about government and politics are highly negative and focused on blunders and disasters, scandal and corruption. News needs to be distinguished from opinion and commentary. Most newspapers contain editorials expressing opinions about the events of the day. The New York Times stands as liberal, the Wall Street Journal is conservative. They supplement their editorials with opinion columns from regular contributors. A few newspapers add op-eds or opinion editorials. These are opinions from people unaffiliated with the paper. Some newspapers carry a range of opinions, others are ideologically monolithic. Cartoons, when the newspapers feature them, often comment critically on public officials' policies and current events. The nonpartisan magazines National Journal and Congressional Quarter Weekly Report cover government and politics focusing on Washington, D.C. Other magazines provide a spectrum of analysis and opinion, ranging from the conservative National Review and Weekly Standard through the New Republic to the liberal Nation and Progressive. All have relatively small readerships. In addition to covering Congress, C-SPAN, which covers the House of Representatives, C-SPAN 2, which covers the Senate, and C-SPAN 3, which covers committees, also have programming that provides for opinion and commentary. There are the Sunday morning interview programs on the major networks, where government officials often appear to provide their take on the news of the day. And there are 24-hour cable news television programs on Fox, MSNBC, CNN, and others. On radio, over 2,000 radio stations employ a news talk format. Hosts have ample time to vent their opinions and cultivate, cajole, and castigate their callers and listeners. Examples might be Rush Limbaugh and Democracy Now! So how does the media influence politics, government, and policy? Well, one of the ways is through agenda setting, the power of the media to tell the public what subjects and issues to think about. They also frame issues, the central idea or theme with which media personnel organize a story and thus give it its point of view. And they can prime a story when the media or news stories ascribe responsibility for a problem to a person or institution. They can mobilize, encourage, or even inspire individuals to engage in political behavior and action. The new media. The early 1980s saw the development of what we call the new media, new technologies and old technologies in new combinations. They are muddying, if not eliminating, the differences between the media. On the iPad, newspapers, televisions, and radio stations look similar. They all have text, pictures, videos, and links. Increasingly, Americans, particularly students, are obtaining information on tablets and from websites, blogs, discussion boards, video sharing sites such as YouTube, and social networking sites like Facebook, podcasts, and Twitter. And of course, there is the marvel of Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia to which so many people, 400 million every month, go to for useful, if not always reliable, information. Other forms of new media. WikiLeaks.org is an organization that exposes the secrets of government corporations and other institutions. Julian Paul Assange, who founded WikiLeaks.org in 2007, has been responsible for leaking U.S. classified embassy cables, U.S. intelligence information through the leaks attributed to Edward Snowden, and the Democratic National Committee hack in 2016. ProPublica is a nonprofit investigative site that has exposed the involvement of doctors in torture, the contamination of drinking water through gas drilling, and other outrages. It is generating and sharing content with many print publications that have cut back on their investigative reporting. Talking Points Memo was primarily responsible for tenacious investigative journalism, pursuing and publicizing the firing of 8 U.S. attorneys by the Bush administration's Justice Department. The result was a scandal that sparked interest by the mainstream media and led to the resignation of President George Bush's Attorney General Alberto Gonzales in 2008. The ideologically conservative Drudge Report came to fame when Matt Drudge used his web portal to spread the latest news and rumors about the relationship between President Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. Andrew Breitbart, a former colleague of Matt Drudge, founded his site in 2005. It aggregates news from the wire services and is viewed by an average of 2.4 million people monthly. He was also responsible for the websites Big Hollywood, Big Government, and Big Journalism, which provides some original reporting and commentary from a conservative perspective by unpaid bloggers, as well as references to articles on other sites. Stephen Bannon, former executive chairman of Breitbart News, was involved as an advisor in President Donald Trump's 2016 campaign and during the early days of the Trump administration. Breitbart made a splash with videos posted on Big Government in September 2009 regarding ACORN, the Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now. Since 2006, conservatives had attacked ACORN, accusing it of voter fraud. This became the dominant frame and set the agenda for media coverage of the organization. Using a hidden camera with heavily edited footage, Big Government released a video that showed ACORN employees offering advice to a man and a woman who were posing as a pimp and a prostitute, proposing to bring underage Salvadoran girls into the United States to be sexually enslaved. The new media can aim at more discrete, specialized audiences, narrowcasting rather than broadcasting. Often controlled by individual communicators, their content is usually aimed at smaller and more socially, economically, and perhaps politically distinct audiences than the mass media. This fragmentation of the mass audience means that the old mass media pursuit of the lowest common denominator content may no longer be financially necessary or viable. Satellite radio is the fastest growing radio market. It uses technology that broadcasts a clear signal from space to receivers anywhere in the world. Providers XM and Sirius offer uninterrupted programming for a subscription fee. Listeners have hundreds of program options. Broadcast radio stations are no longer limited by the range of signal across terrain, but through the web can reach listeners who make up an audience that is less bounded by geography than by shared cultural, social, and political interests. Web magazines for people interested in government, politics, and public affairs. There are web magazines such as Slate, Salon, and Politico with its staff of established political reporters. As major news organizations have gone online, they have hired technologically skilled young people. At first, these people would primarily reprocess content. Now they create it, as they know how to take advantage of the technology. Thanks to cell phone cameras, webcams, and social networks, ordinary people can create, store, sort, share, and show digital videos. People can become citizen journalists as eyewitnesses to events. Examples of the reporting include the earthquake and tsunami that hit Japan in 2011, Hurricane Katrina that hit the U.S. Gulf Coast in 2005, and the massacre of students at Virginia Tech University in 2007. Content is also created through blogs, online diaries, whose authors post information including ideas and opinions. Blogs may permit feedback from readers and provide hyperlinks to other online content that may enrich their discussion. Many people blog. The most popular political blog sites, Instapundit and Daily Kos, claim over 75,000 visitors per day, but few are widely read. Nonetheless, there are thousands of political blogs on the web. The Huffington Post, a news aggregator with some original material, claims more than 1,800 bloggers, and originally none of them were paid. Blogging is a new form of journalism without deadlines or broadcast schedules, but it does not replace reporting. Most bloggers rely on material issued elsewhere for their information: domestic and foreign newspapers, government documents, academic papers, and other media. Nonetheless, the blogosphere can hold public officials accountable by amplifying and spreading information, especially when many bloggers cover the same subject, a phenomenon known as a blog swarm. The limitations of news media include, first, political websites and bloggers generally lack the resources of the news media and the knowledge and expertise of journalists to cover and investigate government, politics, and public policies in depth. They react to rather than originate the news. Second, the new media encourages people to expose themselves to contents, people, and perspectives they already agree with. The audience for Fox News is overwhelmingly Republican, while Democrats gravitate to CNN and MSNBC. Third, the new media are rife with muddle and nonsense, distortion, and error. When the journalist Hunter S. Thompson died, an internet site reported President Nixon's opinion that Thompson represented the dark, venal, and incurably violent side of the American character. In fact, Thompson had said that about Nixon. Fourth, the possibility of the new media falling increasingly under the control of media conglomerates and giant corporations. Google has purchased YouTube. This could eventually subject them to the same demands placed on the mass media: how to finance the production of content and make a profit. The new media are a threat to privacy. Google logs all searches made on it and stores the information indefinitely. Relatedly, the new media tend to defer to government. AOL, Microsoft, and Yahoo, but not Google, have complied with requests from the U.S. Justice Department for website addresses and search terms. Google in China omits links to sites that the Chinese government does not want its citizens to see. In the United States, there are Gawker and its network, including the gossip sites Jezebel and Deadspin. They have no compunction about breaching people's privacy, even if it means violating journalistic norms by paying for information, as they did in the case of the sex diary written in the form of a thesis of a written Duke University graduate, and also a story concerning quarterback Brett Favre's sexual behavior. The new media allow politicians, political parties, interest and advocacy groups, as well as individuals to bypass the traditional media and reach the public. They can try to control their image by deciding what information to release and selecting congenial media through which to communicate it, to their benefit, but not necessarily to our enlightenment.